Hey guys, hope you all are doing well. Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Looks like the video was paused there. Sorry. I am coming to you again from my house. I'm ready to go. I am in my living room. As you can see, we're talking history, and the cat is already falling asleep. It's just like when I preach or when I talk to you guys. Everybody just falls asleep. So I don't know what it is. We've been studying. What did we talk about yesterday? We talked about the Egyptians and mummification and scooping out brains. And I got hungry, and so my wife got me some cheesecake. And so I'm going to eat this cheesecake in front of you all today because it's delicious. And I know it's close to lunch, and this just seems like a really fun thing to do. So anyway, pretty excited about that. Ooh, that's delicious. Cream cheese cheesecake. Just can't hardly beat it. All right, we were talking about Egypt yesterday, and I told you guys I love Egyptian history. I love to study this. We talked about the big chunk of Egyptian history. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think your book does not do justice to Egyptian history. There's not enough pages here devoted to it, which is why I'm like, I don't care what it says. I don't care if it wants me to spend 2 days on this or one day on it. We're going to spend 2 weeks on it because I just think it's very interesting. And I love in section 2, there's a lot of things in here that even I did not know. Believe it or not, I don't know everything. I thought I knew quite a bit about Egyptian history, but I learned quite a few things here. And I know I'm going to be kind of covering and highlighting some things, but I do really want to emphasize reading section 2 because there's some interesting stuff there. It makes some, it does make some broad jumps from looking at Egyptian history and then connecting that to Bible history. I think there's some realistic things said there. I think there's some assumptions made, but I'm going to tell you, there's some connections there that I never really thought about before, and it makes a lot of sense. So anyway, all right, so we left off with mummification yesterday. And basically, when we look at Egyptian history, first of all, I should emphasize, we really don't know a lot about the dynasties. We don't know a lot about the pharaohs. You guys got to remember, up until a couple hundred years ago, we didn't even know what the hieroglyphics said. And so a lot of Egyptian history has been handed down through tradition. We're grateful that the Bible contains some things, and we're grateful that we've been able to translate the hieroglyphics. But again, we just don't know a whole lot about these time periods. So you may remember, and I know I'm recapping a little bit, you may remember that yesterday we discussed the Upper Kingdom, which was in the south, and the Lower Kingdom, which is in the north. But now we're going to do some more confusing things because now we're going to talk about how historians break down Egyptian history. And so basically we do this in three ways, or break it down in 3 parts. You've got the Old Kingdom, and I won't bother giving you dates because you won't remember them, and I won't bother telling you which dynasties because you won't remember them. But just remember that there's the Old Kingdom, there's the Middle Kingdom, and then there is the New Kingdom. And what I wanted to emphasize is that middle part, geographically. If you guys think geographically, you're going to think, okay, the middle of the actual kingdom. But you got to think linear in a time way, chronological. There's Old Kingdom, there's Middle Kingdom, and then there's New Kingdom. And so that's what that's referring to. So when you get into that in your book, don't get caught up in a geographical mindset there. Okay, so the Old Kingdom basically. We know about 30 dynasties. We know specifically about 30 dynasties that existed. There are a lot of them mentioned in your book. We talked about Menes yesterday and how he kind of established and set up and united the 2 kingdoms of Egypt into one powerful kingdom. And my guess is if you know anything about Egypt, most of what we associate with Egypt came from this particular time period. So you guys ever get blessed to go to Egypt someday and you see the Great Pyramids, you see the Sphinx, all of that stuff was likely built during the Old Kingdom. So a lot of classical Egyptian stuff comes from the Old Kingdom. So anyway, that's where that is, the Old Kingdom. And I'll try to explain some things. I got another book here, and I want to explain a couple of things about these 3 pyramids. There's more than 3 pyramids, but there's the 3 largest pyramids, and I'll give you a little background about that. All right, so just very quickly, let's talk about the Middle Kingdom. And I'm not going to try to pronounce all these names, but one that you should probably make note of is, where is it? Mentuhotep. And he's the 11th dynasty. He reunited the 2 lands. Basically, towards the end of the Old Kingdom, it split up again. And so he comes along, he reunites them. Okay, kind of rebuilds up the Egyptian kingdom. And what's interesting, it's probably during this era that we're going to see the events of the Bible start taking place. You may remember that the descendants of Abraham that they are going to migrate and come to Egypt through Joseph and his leadership. And so this is the time period that's probably going to take place. And I know we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years, but this is probably where that took place in. So anyway, there's some names in there. I'm not gonna worry about telling you all those names today. I'm not necessarily worried about that. I don't want you guys to be worried about your upcoming tests and reviews. It's not going to ask for specific dates, and you're not going to know all of these pharaohs. There are a couple of them you'll need to know, but for the time being, I'm not worried about going through that with you today. And then, of course, there's the New Kingdom. And the New Kingdom, again, we're limited in all of our information on this. But basically, when we read the book of Exodus, it's likely that those events took place during the New Kingdom. In fact, it's probably, if I read straight from Exodus 1, it says, "Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph," or basically the Israelites. And it's probably this indication in this verse that indicates that's the beginning of the New Kingdom. And that's when, I'm going to butcher his name again because these are names that are hard to read, but there was a pharaoh named Amos, and he basically founded the New Kingdom, and he chased out the enemies of the Egyptians. And basically, he was not familiar with the Israelites, or he would have likely not been familiar with the Israelites, and so he is going to enslave the Israelites. Now, again, historically, we don't have a lot of proof for that. We're basically going by the limited amount of information and kind of applying common sense here. But like I said, it's worth reading through this last section on page 50 through 51 and seeing about that. It's very interesting how they make these connections, because they actually make the assumption, or they assert here that based on that information, that Moses was born, his foster mother might have been Hatshepsut. She was actually a strong-willed daughter of Thutmose I, and she's going to actually become Pharaoh herself. And so that would kind of explain why she was able to get away with having a Jewish son as her own. And so, again, we're making some assumptions here, but there's some interesting things here. And then if you go based on that logic, then it means then Amenhotep II, that he would have been the actual Pharaoh that would have had the confrontation with Moses. Now, I'm not going to tell you all those things are 100% true. Those are making a lot of jumps, a lot of leaps, a lot of assumptions, but it is interesting to study. Now, Egypt is, of course, going to fall to Alexander the Great. And so Alexander the Great is going to conquer Egypt, and in his conquering of Egypt, he's going to basically rename the capital Alexandria. Alexandria is going to become one of the greatest cities under Alexander's empire. He'll build a huge library there, which we'll talk about and study in later chapters. In that library, there was over 700,000. It's rumored that there were over 700,000 ancient scrolls. All of those have been lost to time, unfortunately. He also built a very famous lighthouse there. The stories go that light from the lighthouse was so great it could be seen for I'll just read it from the book because I know I read it in here a minute ago. 440-foot high marble tower. And that it projected 35 miles across the sea. So for that, something of that extraordinary for that time period. So some of the great wonders of the world. Now, again, those things have all been lost to history, but there's some interesting things to go on there. So just wanted to highlight a few of those things for you all. There are, now I talked about the pyramids a minute ago, and I want to share a little bit of information that's not in your textbook about these pyramids. And I will just tell you about it because I've got it highlighted right here. So there's three very famous pyramids that are built in the area of Giza. And Giza is spelled Giza. You probably need to write that down if you're taking notes. Giza. It's also spelled in some books Gizeh. I prefer to spell it Giza because it's easier to remember, and it's what it sounds like. The most famous of these is the pyramid, of course, called the Great Pyramid. And it was built for the pharaoh Khufu. You don't need to know the spelling of this, but Khufu basically built that one. Khufu's pyramid covered 13 acres, really large piece of property and land. Over 2 million stone blocks, like 2.5 million stone blocks were used to create the largest of the pyramids. Of course, we can't put this thing on a scale, but to put that in perspective for you, just taking those individual stones and then adding them up, we're talking about 5,700,000 tons is what this pyramid potentially would weigh. So we're talking about a really big pyramid here. Um, let's see here. It is not known for a long time. It was a mystery how these pharaohs built these pyramids. But we've learned through archaeological discoveries and through science that they would have been very capable. I'm gonna tell you right now, aliens did not help the Egyptians build pyramids. I don't care what movies or conspiracy shows you've watched. It's not a thing. Science has proven that these people were capable of it, but it probably took over 400,000 men and slaves to actually build these pyramids. So a lot of work. Anyway, let's see here. The second largest pyramid in Giza was built by Pharaoh Khafra, and what's interesting about Khafra is that not only did he build the second largest pyramid, but he's also credited for building the Great Sphinx. And the Sphinx is, of course, that lion statue, the big, large statue that's carved out of limestone, and it's got a lion's body. But that head on top of it is, of course, the pharaoh's head. So you're actually seeing the likeness probably of Khafra. Okay, that's probably who that is. Okay, so a lot of mystery to the Sphinx, but you guys are getting some information about that today. The third pyramid of Giza was built for Pharaoh Menkaure, and you can actually still go to Egypt and see the Sphinx and the three Great Pyramids today. They're still now. I will say, if you're going to go, you need to go as soon as possible. A lot of historians and people trying to preserve history. There's been a lot of problems trying to preserve the pyramids and all of this because, as you all know, the Nile River and the climate and all the things make it very difficult for these things to be preserved. And so there's still a lot of work being done to preserve these things. All right, tomorrow the plan, since we finished the chapter, tomorrow the plan is to talk about two of the greatest contributions of Egypt and discuss, you guys are going to kind of analyze those. But for the rest of class today, you guys are going to work in your groups. So I'm going to hand things over to your teacher right now, and I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to eat the rest of this delicious cheesecake. So God bless you guys. Continue to pray for me and my family. We're praying for you all. Like I said, we're completely well, but I'm just trying to look out for my church and for my family. So, all right, God bless you guys. Have a great day.